The tea had gone cold in my hands, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Through the kitchen window of my modest Sacramento home, I watched the morning fog lift from the neighbor's garden, revealing the same wilted roses I'd been meaning to tend for weeks. Everything felt suspended, waiting. At 62, I'd learned that waiting was often the most dangerous thing you could do. The doorbell rang at exactly 9:30. I knew it would be my son Jackie before I even looked through the peephole. He had that particular way of standing, shoulders back, chin up, like he was about to deliver a boardroom presentation rather than visit his mother. Behind him stood his wife, Donna, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour, clutching a leather portfolio against her chest like armor. "Morning, Mom." Jackie's smile was practiced, the one he'd perfected during his years climbing the corporate ladder at the tech firm. "We brought coffee." He held up a bag from the expensive cafe downtown, the kind that charged $6 for what I could make at home for 50 cents. "I already have coffee," I said, but stepped aside to let them in. The familiar weight of obligation settled on my shoulders as they entered my living room, their eyes doing that quick sweep I'd grown to recognize. Cataloging, appraising, calculating. Donna perched on the edge of my worn sofa, her designer jeans a stark contrast to the faded floral fabric I'd chosen 15 years ago when money was tighter and dreams were smaller. She'd never liked this house, had made that clear since the day Jackie brought her home 8 years ago. Too small, too outdated, too middle class for her aspirations. "You look tired, Margaret," she said, her voice carrying that particular note of concern that never quite reached her eyes. "Are you sleeping well?" "Well enough." I settled into my favorite chair, the one Harold had bought me for my 50th birthday. The leather was cracked now, but it still held the shape of my body, still offered the comfort of familiar embrace. "What brings you by so early?" Jackie and Donna exchanged a look, one of those married couple communications that excluded everyone else in the room. He cleared his throat, a habit he'd developed during his teenage years when he was about to ask for something he knew I couldn't afford. "We have some exciting news," he began, opening the portfolio Donna had been clutching. "We found it, Mom. The perfect house." He pulled out a glossy brochure, the kind real estate agents used for million-dollar properties. The house sprawled across the pages like a movie set, all gleaming white columns, infinity pools, and ocean views that seemed to stretch into forever. Malibu. Of course it was Malibu. "It's beautiful," I said, because it was. It was also completely beyond anything I could have imagined for myself, even in my most ambitious dreams. 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, private beach access. Donna rattled off the features like a prayer. The children would have their own wing when they visit. The children. Jackie and Donna's twins, Michael and Christine, were barely 6 years old. They visited me twice a year, usually dragged along by their parents who spent the entire time checking their phones and counting the minutes until they could leave. "It sounds wonderful," I said carefully. "I'm sure you'll be very happy there." Another look between them, this one sharper, more urgent. Jackie leaned forward, his hands clasped in that position he'd learned in business school, the one that said he was about to negotiate. "Here's the thing, Mom. We need a cosigner for the mortgage." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt something cold settle in my chest, a familiar weight I'd carried through too many conversations like this one. "A cosigner? It's just a formality," Donna said quickly. "Jackie's income is more than sufficient, but with the housing market the way it is, banks are requiring additional security for loans over a certain amount." "How much?" I asked, though I already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. $550,000, Jackie said, as if he were discussing the weather. "But like Donna said, it's just a formality. You wouldn't actually be responsible for any payments." I looked at the brochure again, at the pristine white house that seemed to mock the modest surroundings of my own home. 50 years of careful saving, of choosing generic brands over name brands, of driving my Honda until it literally couldn't run anymore. 50 years of building something solid, something mine. "I need to think about it," I said. Jackie's expression shifted, the practiced smile slipping just enough to reveal the impatience underneath. "Think about what, Mom? It's a standard cosigner agreement. You're not actually paying anything." Then why do you need me to sign it? Because, he paused, glancing at Donna again. Because you have equity in this house. Because you have savings. Because you're family. The word family hit differently coming from him. When had I last felt like family to them? When had I last been invited to their apartment for dinner, or asked about my day, or included in their plans for anything beyond financial necessity? I've worked very hard for what I have, I said quietly. Your father and we sacrificed a lot to build this security. Dad's been gone for 3 years, Mom. Jackie's voice carried an edge of irritation. He's not coming back to enjoy it. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Harold had died of a heart attack at 59, just as we were starting to plan for retirement, just as we were beginning to imagine what life might look like after decades of working and saving and planning for a future that never came. Jackie, Donna said softly, placing a hand on his arm. But she didn't apologize for him. She never did. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I need you both to leave now. Mom, come on, don't be dramatic. Jackie remained seated, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he'd perfected over the years. We're asking for a simple favor. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? The question came out harder than I'd intended, but I didn't soften it. When was the last time you visited when you didn't need something? When was the last time you called just to talk? We're busy, Mom. We have careers, children, responsibilities. We can't all sit around in empty houses feeling sorry for ourselves. The words landed like physical blows. I watched my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd supported through college, through his early career struggles, through the endless parade of needs and wants that had defined our relationship, and saw a stranger. Get out, I said. Margaret, please, Donna started. Get out of my house. They left, but not before Jackie placed the mortgage papers on my coffee table. Think about it, Mom. We'll give you a few days to come around. But don't wait too long. The seller won't hold the property forever. The door closed behind them with a soft click, leaving me alone with the glossy brochure and the stack of legal documents that would sign away my financial security, my peace of mind, my future. I picked up the papers, scanning the dense legal language until I found the number that made my hands shake. $550,000. Not a formality, not a simple favor. A mortgage that would make me responsible for more money than I'd ever seen in my life. The phone rang. For a moment I thought it might be Jackie, calling to apologize, to explain, to somehow make this right. But the caller ID showed my neighbor's number. Janet Waters, the widow who lived 3 doors down. Margaret? Janet's voice was warm, concerned. I saw your son leave. You look upset. Through the window, I could see Janet standing in her own kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, watching me with the kind of attention that came from genuine care rather than calculation. I'm fine, I said automatically, then stopped. When had I started lying to the people who actually cared about me? Actually, no, I'm not fine. Come over, Janet said simply. I'll make fresh coffee. Real coffee. Not that overpriced stuff from downtown. I looked at the mortgage papers one more time, then left them on the table and walked out my front door. For the first time in months, I didn't look back. But as I crossed the street to Janet's house, I felt something shift inside me. A hardening, a crystallization of resolve I hadn't felt since Harold's funeral. My son had made a choice today. He'd chosen to see me as a resource rather than a person, a bank account rather than his mother. Now I would have to make a choice too. The question was, would I choose to be the woman who gave in, who sacrificed her security for the sake of keeping peace? Or would I choose to be someone else entirely? Janet's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and real coffee, the kind Harold used to grind fresh every morning. She'd set out her good china, the delicate blue and white pattern she'd inherited from her grandmother. And there was something about the ritual of it that made my chest loosen for the first time in hours. Sit, she said, pointing to the chair by the window, and tell me what that son of yours has done now. I'd known Janet for 8 years, ever since she'd moved in after her husband passed. We'd developed the kind of friendship that grew slowly, built on shared morning walks and borrowed cups of sugar, on the understanding that came from two women who'd learned to navigate the world without their husband's steady presence. He wants me to co-sign a mortgage, I said, accepting the cup she offered. $550,000. Janet's hand stilled halfway to her own cup. For what? A beach house in Malibu. 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, private beach access. The words tasted bitter. He says it's just a formality. Nothing involving that much money is ever just a formality. Janet's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years as a high school principal, dealing with teenagers who thought they could charm their way out of consequences. What did you tell him? I told him I needed to think about it. Then I told him to leave. Good. Janet settled into her chair, her gray eyes sharp with attention. What does your gut tell you? My gut. When had I stopped listening to that? When had I started believing that my instincts were somehow less valid than my son's confidence, his wife's polished certainty? My gut tells me this is wrong, I said quietly. That if I sign those papers, I'll lose everything Harold and I worked for. Then why are you even considering it? The question hung between us like a challenge. Why was I considering it? Because he was my son? Because I'd spent 33 years prioritizing his needs over my own? Because the alternative, saying no, setting a boundary, risking his anger, felt more terrifying than financial ruin? Because I'm tired, I admitted. I'm tired of fighting with him. I'm tired of being the bad guy every time he asks for something I can't give. Janet reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was warm, steady. Margaret, honey, you're not the bad guy for protecting yourself. You're not the bad guy for wanting to keep what you've earned. But he's my son. And you're his mother. When was the last time he acted like that mattered? The question hit like a physical blow because I couldn't answer it. When had Jackie last called just to check on me? When had he last included me in his plans, his life, his family's milestones beyond the bare minimum? 3 years ago, I said finally. At Harold's funeral. He held my hand during the service. Janet's expression softened with understanding. Grief makes people do strange things, Margaret. Sometimes it makes them reach for connection. Sometimes it makes them pull away. And sometimes, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes it makes them see opportunity where they should see loss. What do you mean? I mean your husband left you well provided for. You own your house outright. You have savings. You have security. To some people, that might look like opportunity. The implications settled over me like cold water. You think he's been planning this? I think your son has been watching you live alone in that house for 3 years, and I think he's been doing math. I set down my cup, my hands trembling slightly. I need to see those papers again. Want me to come with you? No. The word came out firmer than I'd expected. I need to do this myself. But as I walked back across the street, I felt Janet's presence like a shield at my back. For the first time in months, I didn't feel entirely alone. The mortgage papers were still spread across my coffee table, waiting like a trap. I picked them up and began to read, really read, beyond the intimidating legal language to the terms underneath. Co-signer, jointly and severally liable. In the event of default, my blood ran cold as the reality became clear. This wasn't a formality. This was a guarantee. If Jackie and Donna couldn't make their payments, for any reason, the bank would come after me for the full amount. My house, my savings, my security, everything. I reached for my phone and dialed Jackie's number. He answered on the second ring. Mom, I was hoping you'd call. Have you had a chance to look over the paperwork? I have, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. And I have some questions. Of course. What can I clarify for you? The part where it says I'm jointly and severally liable for the full amount of the loan. Can you explain what that means? A pause. Then, it's standard legal language, Mom. Nothing to worry about. But what does it mean? Another pause, longer this time. It means that if for some reason we couldn't make the payments, which won't happen, the bank could ask you to cover them. But like I said, it's not going to be an issue. And if I couldn't cover them? Mom, come on, you're overthinking this. If I couldn't cover them, Jackie, what would happen? Silence. Then finally, the bank would foreclose on the collateral, which is the house, both houses. Both houses, my house. The home Harold and I had bought with our first real savings, where I'd raised Jackie, where I'd planned to spend my remaining years surrounded by memories and security. I see, I said quietly. But Mom, that's not going to happen. My salary alone covers the mortgage payments. We just need the cosigner for the bank's requirements. Then why not ask Donna's parents? They don't have the same equity position you do. Equity position. I was an equity position to him. Not his mother, not the woman who'd sacrificed her own dreams to pay for his education, not the person who'd held him when he was sick and celebrated his achievements and mourned his failures. I was an equity position. I need more time to think about this, I said. How much more time? His voice carried a note of impatience. The seller is expecting an answer by Friday. Today was Tuesday. 3 days to decide whether to risk everything I'd built for a son who saw me as a means to an end. I'll let you know, I said, and hung up before he could respond. I sat in my living room as the afternoon light faded. The mortgage papers spread around me like evidence of a crime. The house felt different now. Not like a home, but like collateral. Not like sanctuary, but like something that could be taken away. The phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Mrs. Buffett? The voice was young, female, uncertain. Yes? This is Christine. Christine Slaughter. I don't know if you remember me. Christine. The name sparked a memory. Jackie's first serious girlfriend. The one he'd dated through college and his early 20s. The one he'd brought home for holidays, who'd helped me cook Thanksgiving dinner and laughed at Harold's terrible jokes. The one he'd abandoned when he met Donna. Of course I remember you, dear. How are you? I'm good. I'm calling because I heard through mutual friends that Jackie was asking you to co-sign something, and I thought you should know some things about his financial situation. My pulse quickened. What kind of things? Can we meet? I'd rather not say this over the phone. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown the next morning. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, feeling the weight of secrets and revelations pressing down on me. What had Christine learned about my son that she felt compelled to warn me about? What did she know that I didn't? And more importantly, what was I going to do with whatever she told me? The mortgage papers seemed to glow in the lamplight, waiting for my signature, waiting for my surrender. But for the first time since Jackie had walked into my house that morning, I felt something other than fear. I felt curiosity, and beneath that, something harder, more dangerous. I felt the first stirring of rage. The coffee shop was one of those deliberately rustic places that charged premium prices for the illusion of authenticity. I arrived early, choosing a corner table where I could watch the entrance while nursing a cup of coffee that cost more than my usual weekly grocery budget for the beverage alone. Christine Slaughter walked in at exactly 10 o'clock, and I was struck by how little she'd changed in the 8 years since I'd last seen her. Still petite, still carrying herself with that quiet confidence that had made her so easy to like. Her dark hair was shorter now, cut in a professional bob that suited her work at the law firm where she'd built her career. Mrs. Buffett, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for calling, I replied, studying her face. There was something in her expression, a combination of concern and determination that reminded me of myself at her age. You said you had information about Jackie's financial situation? She nodded, then glanced around the cafe as if making sure we weren't being overheard. I should probably start by saying that I don't have any ill will toward Jackie. What we had was a long time ago, and I've moved on. But when I heard what he was asking you to do, how did you hear about it? I work at Morrison, Klein & Associates. We handle real estate transactions for several high-end properties in the area. The Malibu house Jackie is trying to buy? We're not representing him, but we know the property. And we know the seller. My stomach tightened. What about the seller? The seller is a client of ours. Has been for years. Let's just say he's particular about who he sells to. He runs credit checks, background checks, employment verification, the works. And? Christine pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of what looked like a credit report. Jackie's application was declined 3 weeks ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. Declined? His debt-to-income ratio is too high. He's carrying significant credit card debt. a car loan that's upside down, and he's already missed 2 mortgage payments on his current condo. The room seemed to tilt around me. He told me his salary could easily cover the mortgage payments. His salary might be able to cover them, but his existing obligations make it impossible. The bank won't approve him for additional credit without a cosigner who can guarantee the full amount. So he needs me to get approved at all. That's right. And Mrs. Buffett. Christine leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. The seller's agent told us that Jackie already put down a non-refundable deposit of $50,000. If he can't secure financing by Friday, he loses that money. $50,000. The amount staggered me. Where did he get $50,000 for a deposit? I don't know, but I suspect it's money he doesn't actually have. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Jackie had never mentioned a deposit. He'd presented this as a simple favor, a formality, a minor inconvenience to help his family achieve their dream. But the reality was far more desperate. He'd already committed money he couldn't afford to lose, and now he needed me to save him from financial catastrophe. There's something else, Christine continued. I did some digging. Nothing illegal, just public records. Jackie and Donna filed for bankruptcy protection 2 years ago. It was discharged, but the debts they accumulated afterward suggest they haven't changed their spending habits. Bankruptcy? The word came out as a whisper. But they live in that expensive condo. They drive new cars, they take vacations. All on credit. And now that credit is maxed out. I thought about the designer clothes, the expensive coffee, the casual way they'd discussed a $500,000 mortgage as if it were pocket change. All of it built on borrowed money, borrowed time, borrowed hope. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Christine's expression softened. Because I remember how kind you were to me. How you treated me like family when Jackie and I were together. You deserved better than the way that relationship ended, and you deserve better than this. The way that relationship ended. I'd never known the full story, just that one day Christine was part of our family gatherings, and the next, she was gone, replaced by Donna with her polished ambition and calculating smile. What happened between you and Jackie? I asked. He cheated on me with Donna while I was visiting my sick mother in Portland. When I found out, I confronted him. He told me that Donna could give him the kind of life he deserved, connections, opportunities, status. He said I was holding him back. The cruelty of it was so perfectly Jackie that I felt a familiar ache in my chest. I'm sorry. I got over it. But I never forgot how easily he discarded something real for something that looked better on paper. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I worry he's doing the same thing to you. What do you mean? I mean he's willing to risk your financial security, your home, your future, everything that actually matters, for the appearance of success. And when it all falls apart, he'll find a way to make it your fault. The truth of it settled over me like a shroud. This wasn't about helping family. This wasn't about a simple favor or a formality. This was about Jackie using me as a human shield against the consequences of his own choices. What would you do? I asked. If you were in my position? Christine considered the question seriously. I'd protect myself. I'd say no, and I'd be prepared for him to get angry about it. Really angry. And if he never speaks to me again? Then you'll know where you really stood with him all along. After Christine left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the credit report she'd printed out for me. The numbers told a story of reckless spending, mounting debt, and desperate measures. My son wasn't just financially irresponsible, he was in free fall, and he wanted to drag me down with him. I drove home slowly, my mind churning with possibilities and implications. The mortgage papers were still on my coffee table, waiting for my signature. But now they looked different, not like a favor, but like a trap. The phone was ringing when I walked in. Jackie's name appeared on the caller ID. Mom, I was hoping we could talk. I'm listening. Donna and I have been thinking about what you said yesterday, about wanting more time. We understand this is a big decision, and we want to make sure you're comfortable with everything. The reasonableness in his voice was so perfectly calculated that I almost laughed. I appreciate that. So we thought maybe we could sweeten the deal a little. What if we gave you a small equity stake in the property? Say, 5%? That way you'd be building wealth too, not just helping us out. 5% of a house I'd be fully responsible for if they defaulted. 5% of a dream that could become my nightmare. That's generous, I said carefully. We could even draw up a contract, make it official. You'd be part owner, not just a co-signer. Part owner of what, exactly? The house, of course, the beach house. And if you couldn't make the payments? Mom, I've told you, if you couldn't make the payments, Jackie, and the bank foreclosed, what would happen to my 5%? Silence. Then, well, if the bank foreclosed, everyone would lose their investment. But I'd still be liable for the full amount of the loan. Technically, yes, but... So I'd lose my house, my savings, and my 5% of your house. It's not going to come to that. But if it did... Mom, you're being unnecessarily pessimistic about this. We're talking about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here. For who? For all of us. For the family. Family. There was that word again, wielded like a weapon. I looked around my living room, at the photos of Jackie as a child, at the memories embedded in every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration. This was my family too, my history, my security, my peace of mind. I need to ask you something directly, I said. Did you put down a deposit on this house? Another pause, longer this time. What does that have to do with anything? Did you put down a deposit, yes or no? We made a good faith payment to show we were serious buyers. How much? Mom, that's not really... How much, Jackie? $50,000. Where did you get $50,000? Does it matter? The point is, we're committed to this purchase. We can't back out now. But I could. I could still walk away from this disaster before it consumed everything Harold and I had built together. I could still choose to protect myself instead of enabling my son's financial recklessness. I'll call you back, I said. Mom, wait! I hung up and sat in the silence of my living room, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. On my coffee table, the mortgage papers waited like a contract with the devil himself. Outside, I could see Janet working in her garden, her movements careful and purposeful. She glanced up and waved, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her presence in my life. Someone who cared about me without wanting anything in return. Tomorrow was Thursday. Jackie expected an answer by Friday. I knew what I had to do. The question was whether I had the courage to do it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Harold's old financial records spread before me, calculating and recalculating the numbers until they blurred together in the lamplight. 50 years of careful planning, of choosing security over luxury, of building something lasting. My house was worth approximately $400,000. My savings account held another $180,000. My retirement fund contained $220,000. Everything Harold and I had worked for, everything we'd sacrificed for, totaled just over $800,000. The mortgage Jackie wanted me to co-sign was for $550,000. If he defaulted, and Christine's revelations made that seem not just possible but probable, I would lose nearly everything. At 3 a.m, I made myself a cup of tea and called my own lawyer, Benjamin Scott. His answering service told me he'd return my call first thing in the morning, but I couldn't wait. I needed to understand my options before I faced my son again. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. Not just for saying no, I'd moved beyond that simple refusal, but for something more comprehensive. Something that would protect me and perhaps teach Jackie a lesson he should have learned decades ago. Benjamin called back at 8 o'clock sharp. Margaret, what's this about a mortgage co-signing situation? I explained everything. The Malibu house, the $500,000 loan, Jackie's hidden financial problems, the non-refundable deposit. Benjamin listened without interrupting, making occasional notes. You absolutely cannot sign this, he said when I finished. Based on what you've told me, you'd be assuming full financial responsibility for someone else's luxury purchase while they maintain all the benefits. It's unconscionable. I need more than just advice on saying no, Benjamin. I need to know about my legal options. What kind of legal options? If Jackie tries to pressure me, manipulate me, or retaliate against me for refusing, what can I do? Are you expecting him to retaliate? I thought about the cold calculation in his voice when he'd discussed the deposit. The way he'd dismissed my concerns as pessimistic, the casual cruelty with which he'd mentioned Harold's death. Yes, I think I am. Then document everything. Keep records of all conversations. Save all correspondence. If he makes threats or engages in harassment, we'll have grounds for a restraining order. What about his access to my finances? Could he somehow force me to co-sign? Not legally, no. But Margaret, if you're worried about your son's potential behavior, maybe we should discuss other protective measures. Powers of attorney, healthcare directives, that sort of thing. I'm more concerned about him having keys to my house. There was a pause. Does he have keys to your house? I gave him a spare set after Harold died, in case of emergencies. I'd recommend changing your locks immediately. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen as the morning light filtered through the windows, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. For the first time in days, I wasn't reacting to Jackie's agenda. I was setting my own. I called a locksmith first, then drove to the bank where Harold and I had kept our accounts for 30 years. The manager, George Adams, greeted me with the kind of warm familiarity that came from decades of relationship. "Margaret, how are you holding up?" "I'm well, George. I need to make some changes to my accounts." "Of course. What can I help you with?" "I want to remove my son's name from my emergency contact list, and I want to set up additional security measures for any large transactions." George's expression grew serious. "Is everything all right?" "I'm just being cautious." I pulled out the mortgage documents. "Can you look at these and tell me what you think?" He studied the papers for several minutes, his frown deepening. "Margaret, this is a significant financial commitment. Are you planning to co-sign this?" "I'm planning to say no, but I want to understand what would happen if I said yes." "If you signed this, you'd be fully responsible for $550,000 in debt. If the primary borrowers defaulted, we'd come after you for the full amount plus interest and penalties. And if I couldn't pay, we'd foreclose on any collateral you'd pledged, which according to this document would include your home, and pursue garnishment of your other assets." "Including my retirement accounts?" "Potentially, yes." I nodded, filing away the information. "Can you set up a flag on my account? Something that would require additional verification before any large transactions?" "Absolutely." "What kind of verification?" "I want any transaction over $10,000 to require my physical presence with 2 forms of identification." George made notes on his computer. "Done. Is there anything else you need?" "Yes, I want to update my will." By noon, I had accomplished more in one morning than I had in the previous 3 days. The locks were changed, my accounts were secured, and I had an appointment with my attorney that afternoon to update my estate planning documents. I was in the middle of making lunch when Jackie arrived. I watched him through the kitchen window as he walked up to my front door, his stride confident, his expression expectant. He reached for the door handle, the automatic gesture of someone who'd always had access, and turned it. Nothing happened. He tried again, then knocked. "Mom, the door's locked." I waited a moment before answering, letting him wonder. When I opened the door, his face was a study in confusion. "Your key didn't work," he said. "I had the locks changed this morning." "Why?" "Because it's my house." Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of irritation quickly masked by concern. "Are you having security issues? Is someone bothering you?" "No one's bothering me, Jackie. I just decided I wanted to control who has access to my home." "But I'm your son." "Yes, you are. Would you like to come in?" He stepped inside, his eyes immediately going to the coffee table where the mortgage papers still lay. "Have you made a decision?" "I have." "And?" I gestured toward the living room. "Sit down. We need to talk." He remained standing, his jaw tightening. "Just tell me, Mom. Are you going to help us or not?" "I'm not going to co-sign your mortgage." The words hung in the air between us like a physical barrier. Jackie's face went through several expressions: surprise, disbelief, anger, before settling into something harder. "You're not going to help us. I'm not going to risk everything Harold and I worked for so you can live in a house you can't afford. We can afford it. I told you. You told me a lot of things that weren't true." I picked up the credit report Christine had given me. "You never mentioned that your loan application was declined. You never mentioned that you've missed mortgage payments on your current condo. You never mentioned that you filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago." His face went white. Who told you that? It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is that you lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't think those details were relevant. You asked me to risk $500,000 based on information you knew was false. How is that not lying? Mom, listen to me. He moved closer, his voice taking on that persuasive tone I'd heard him use with clients. Yes, we've had some financial challenges. Everyone has. But this house is an investment. It's going to appreciate in value. We're not just asking you to help us. We're offering you an opportunity to build wealth. An opportunity to lose everything I have. You're being paranoid. I'm being realistic, and I'm being final. The answer is no. Jackie's mask finally slipped completely. You're really going to do this? You're going to let us lose $50,000 because you're too selfish to help your own family? I'm going to protect myself from being financially destroyed by your poor choices. Poor choices? His voice rose. Everything I've done has been to build a better life for my family, for your grandchildren. And you're going to sabotage that because you're scared? I'm going to preserve my security because I'm smart. Smart? You're a 70-year-old woman living alone in a house that's too big for you, hoarding money you'll never spend. What's smart about that? The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. I'm 62, Jackie, and I earned every dollar of that money. Dad earned it. Dad's dead. You're sitting on a pile of money that could help your family, and you're choosing to be selfish instead. Get out. Mom, get out of my house. You're making a mistake. When we lose that deposit, when we can't get another loan, when my children ask why they can't have nice things, I'm going to tell them it's because their grandmother chose money over family. And I'll tell them it's because their father chose appearances over responsibility. He stared at me for a long moment, his face twisted with rage and something else. Something that looked almost like hatred. You'll regret this. Will I? When you're sitting alone in this house with no family, no grandchildren, no one who cares about you, you'll regret this. I walked to the front door and opened it. Goodbye, Jackie. He left without another word, but I could feel his anger radiating like heat. Through the window, I watched him sit in his car for several minutes, talking animatedly on his phone, probably calling Donna, probably planning their next move. I should have felt sad. I should have felt guilty or conflicted or heartbroken. Instead, I felt liberated. For the first time in years, I had chosen myself over someone else's expectations. I had protected what mattered to me instead of sacrificing it for the illusion of family harmony. The mortgage papers still lay on my coffee table, but they no longer felt like a threat. They were just papers now, meaningless without my signature. I picked them up and walked to the fireplace. The flames consumed them quickly, curling the edges into ash and smoke. Tomorrow was Friday. Jackie would lose his deposit and his dream house would slip away. But I would still have my security, my dignity, and my self-respect. And somehow, that felt like enough. For now. The lawsuit papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after I'd burned the mortgage documents. The process server was a young woman with kind eyes who apologized as she handed me the official envelope. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just doing my job. Of course you are, dear. Thank you. I closed the door and walked to my kitchen table, the envelope heavy in my hands. The return address read, Morrison and Associates, Attorneys at Law. Not Christine's firm, but another one downtown. Inside, the legal language was dense and intimidating, but the core message was clear. Jackie Kirk versus Margaret Buffett. He was suing me for $550,000 in damages, claiming I had verbally agreed to co-sign his mortgage and that my refusal had caused him significant financial harm. I read the document twice, then called Benjamin Scott. They're claiming you made a verbal contract? Benjamin's voice carried the righteous indignation of a lawyer who'd seen too many frivolous lawsuits. That's absurd. Even if you had agreed, which you didn't, a verbal promise to co-sign a mortgage wouldn't be legally binding. Can they actually take this to court? They can file it, sure. Anyone can file a lawsuit. But Margaret, this is desperate. They're hoping you'll be intimidated enough to settle out of court. What if I don't settle? Then we go to court and destroy their case. The judge will see right through this. I felt oddly calm as I hung up the phone. Jackie had escalated from manipulation to outright legal warfare, but instead of fear, I felt something closer to relief. Finally, his true nature was exposed for what it was. Not a son asking for help, but a predator willing to destroy his own mother for financial gain. The phone rang almost immediately. Jackie's number appeared on the caller ID. "Mom, I assume you've seen the lawsuit by now." "I have. I didn't want it to come to this, but you forced my hand." "I forced your hand by refusing to risk my financial security for your poor choices?" "You made a commitment to help us. We made decisions based on that commitment. Now you're backing out, and it's going to cost us everything." "I never made any commitment, Jackie. I told you I needed time to think, and when I thought about it, I said no. You said you'd help family. You said you understood how important this was to us. I said I'd consider it. Considering something isn't the same as agreeing to it. Tell that to the judge." "I will." The confidence in my voice seemed to surprise him. "Mom, you don't want to go to court. Legal fees alone will cost you tens of thousands. Just settle with us for the amount of the deposit, and we can put this behind us." "You mean give you $50,000 to drop a lawsuit that has no legal basis?" "I mean prevent this from getting ugly." "It's already ugly, Jackie. You're suing your own mother." "I'm protecting my family." "No, you're trying to extort money from me because you gambled with money you didn't have and lost. I'm trying to hold you accountable for your promises. Then I'll see you in court." I hung up and sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the morning light and the familiar comfort of my own home. Harold's coffee mug still sat in the cabinet. His reading glasses still lay on the counter where he'd left them 3 years ago. This house held 50 years of memories, of shared dreams and quiet contentments. Jackie was willing to destroy all of that for a beach house he couldn't afford. But I wasn't going to let him. Janet appeared at my back door an hour later, carrying a plate of homemade cookies and wearing an expression of fierce determination. "I heard about the lawsuit," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "The whole neighborhood's talking about it." "I'm sorry it's become public." "Don't you dare apologize. That boy should be ashamed of himself, dragging his mother to court like some common criminal. He thinks he can intimidate me into giving him money." "And can he?" I looked at my friend. This woman who'd stood by me through Harold's death, through the lonely years that followed, through the gradual realization that my son saw me as a resource rather than a person. Her loyalty was freely given, no strings attached, no hidden agendas. "No," I said firmly. "He can't." "Good, because I have something that might help." She pulled out a manila folder. "I've been asking around about Jackie and Donna. Turns out they're not as discreet as they think they are." Inside the folder were photographs, printouts from social media mostly, Jackie and Donna at expensive restaurants, designer shopping bags visible in their car, vacation photos from Paris and Rome and Hawaii, all dated within the past year, all during the time when Jackie claimed they were struggling financially. "This is from Donna's Instagram account," Janet said, pointing to a photo of Donna wearing what looked like a $1,000 dress. "Posted 2 weeks ago. And this one shows them at that new sushi place downtown that charges $300 per person. Where did you get these?" "My granddaughter helped me. She's good with computers." Janet's smile was sharp. "Turns out Donna posts everything online. Every purchase, every meal, every vacation. She's been living like a millionaire while claiming poverty." I stared at the photos, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. They've been spending money they don't have, documenting it all online and then asking me to bail them out. That's not even the best part. Janet pulled out another set of papers. "I also found their bankruptcy filing from 2 years ago. It's public record. Want to know what they listed as their reason for financial distress? Tell me." "Medical expenses. Specifically, medical expenses related to fertility treatments." I frowned. "But they have twins, Michael and Christine." "Exactly. They claimed they needed bankruptcy protection because of medical bills they incurred trying to have children. But they already had children. They lied to the bankruptcy court about their circumstances. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They committed fraud. It looks that way to me. And if they lied to the bankruptcy court, what makes you think they're telling the truth now?" I studied the documents spread across my kitchen table. The lawsuit, the photographs, the bankruptcy filing. Together, they painted a picture of two people who'd built their entire lifestyle on deception and financial manipulation. Janet, I need to ask you something. If this goes to court, if I need character witnesses, people who can speak to my integrity and my relationship with Jackie, I'll be there, she said immediately. And so will half the neighborhood. We've all watched how he treats you, Margaret. We've all seen how he only comes around when he needs something. It might get ugly. It's already ugly. But you're not alone in this. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, my lawyer began building what he called a comprehensive defense strategy. We documented every interaction I'd had with Jackie, every lie he'd told, every manipulation he'd attempted. Christine Slaughter provided an affidavit detailing Jackie's financial deception. The bank manager testified that Jackie's loan application had been declined due to his credit history. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. 5 days before the trial, I received a call from a woman named Madeline Finney, who identified herself as Jackie's former colleague at the tech firm. Mrs. Buffett, I've been following your case in the news, and I feel I need to tell you something about your son. What is it? Jackie was fired from his job 2 months ago. Not laid off, not downsized, fired, for falsifying expense reports. My blood ran cold. He's been fired? He was submitting fake receipts for business expenses, inflating his reimbursements. When they caught him, they terminated him immediately and reported it to the police. Are there charges pending? I don't know about criminal charges, but I know the company is considering civil action to recover the money he stole. After I hung up, I sat in my living room as the full scope of Jackie's deception became clear. He'd been fired for theft, was facing potential criminal charges, had no steady income, and was drowning in debt. The Malibu house wasn't just a dream. It was a desperate attempt to maintain an illusion of success while his entire life collapsed around him. And he'd been willing to destroy me to save himself. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, touching the furniture Harold and I had chosen together, looking at the photographs that chronicled our life together and Jackie's childhood. In one picture, Jackie was maybe 8 years old, grinning toothlessly at the camera, while Harold helped him build a treehouse in our backyard. When had that laughing boy become the man who was willing to sue his own mother? When had love become leverage? When had family become a weapon? I didn't have answers to those questions. But I knew that tomorrow, in a courtroom downtown, I would face the son I'd raised and refuse to be his victim one final time. The mortgage papers were long since burned to ash. Jackie's lawsuit would meet the same fate, and I would still be standing when it was all over. Because I had learned something important in these past months. I was worth protecting. My security, my dignity, my peace of mind. They mattered. They were worth fighting for. And tomorrow, I would prove it. The courthouse felt colder than I expected, even though it was spring. I held Janet's hand as we walked through the crowd of reporters and curious onlookers. I'd worn my navy blue suit, the same one I'd bought for Harold's funeral. It felt like armor now. My son sat across the aisle, stiff in a gray suit that didn't fit quite right. He looked older than I remembered, but not wiser. Donna wasn't there. Maybe shame finally caught up with her. Or maybe she just didn't care. The judge entered right at 9 a.m., sharp and no nonsense. His voice had that clipped tone of someone who didn't suffer fools. When he looked at Jackie's claim, he raised an eyebrow and muttered, "A family dispute or a thinly veiled extortion?" The whole courtroom went quiet. Jackie testified first. He tried to sound wounded, said I'd promised to help and then betrayed him. He even forced a few tears. But under cross-examination, he couldn't answer the simplest questions. He had no emails, no text messages, no written promises, because there weren't any. I never made one. Then it was my turn. Walking to the witness stand, I could feel every eye in the room on me. But I didn't shake. I didn't stammer. I looked straight at the judge, and I told the truth. "I'm not here to punish my son," I said. "I'm here because he tried to punish me for saying no. I spent my life sacrificing, saving, providing. I buried my husband too young and raised our son to believe in responsibility. But somewhere along the line, he learned entitlement instead. When I finished, I felt something shift. The judge's expression changed. So did the tone of the room. Then Christine Slaughter testified. She didn't have to come, but she did. She laid out Jackie's failed mortgage application, his debt, the hidden deposit, and his financial recklessness. She even told the court about the bankruptcy he never mentioned. The last blow came from Jackie's former employer, who confirmed he'd been fired for falsifying expense reports and was under civil investigation. The judge looked at Jackie like he was something he'd scrape off his shoe. "I find in favor of Mrs. Buffett," he said, voice steady and cold, "with prejudice." And then, words I'll never forget. "This court is referring this case to the district attorney for potential elder financial abuse. Mr. Kirk, you are ordered to pay your mother's full legal fees, $48,360. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. I didn't flinch. Jackie stared at me. I didn't return the look. We walked out of that courtroom, Janet beside me like a soldier. Reporters called my name, but I kept walking. I didn't need headlines. I needed peace. The weeks after the trial were a whirlwind. The DA opened a formal investigation into Jackie's actions. Donna filed for divorce and took the twins to Arizona. I later learned that Jackie was charged with attempted elder financial exploitation. He took a plea deal, 18 months probation, mandatory financial counseling, and a no-contact order. He lost his job permanently. Word spread fast in Sacramento. His name was tarnished. Employers cut ties. Friends disappeared. And me? I reclaimed my life. I rewrote my will. Jackie is out. I left everything to a scholarship fund for older women who want to go back to school or start over. I named it after Harold. He would have loved that. I changed the locks. I updated my legal documents. I even started volunteering at a legal aid clinic for seniors who'd been manipulated or financially abused by family. "I'm not a lawyer," I told them, "but I know what it feels like to be treated like a bank instead of a person." Somewhere along the way, my story got picked up by the news. A small headline turned into a feature. "Widow refuses to co-sign son's luxury home. Wins in court and sparks change." I was invited to speak on the radio, to write editorials. I didn't say Jackie's name. I didn't need to. Then one day, a letter arrived. Handwritten. I recognized the handwriting before I even opened it. "Dear Mom, you probably won't want to read this, and I wouldn't blame you. I just want to say I'm sorry. Not just for the lawsuit, but for everything. I lost everything, and I deserve to. But I'm trying to start over. I know it doesn't fix things. I just hope one day you can forgive me. Jackie." I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and never read it again. I didn't throw it away, I just put it somewhere I wouldn't see it every day. That was enough. Some wounds don't heal, not completely, but they do stop bleeding. Tonight, I sit on my porch with a cup of tea, listening to the crickets, watching the roses Harold planted all those years ago bloom in the twilight. My house is still mine. My savings are intact. My peace is unshaken. And most importantly, I chose myself. I chose to protect my dignity over pleasing someone who stopped seeing me as his mother the moment I said no. I used to think peace came from keeping the family together. Now I know better. Peace comes from protecting what's sacred, even when it means letting go.